What's up everyone, today we are going to do a speed painting video for the Troglodytes from Claustrophobia 1643. I tried to keep them as close as I could to the box artwork, but because it's a speed painting video we're going to be doing a lot of dry brushing. I'm also going to be using my airbrush for the majority of getting the color onto them. If you do not have an airbrush, don't worry about that. You can do it without it, but I'm just letting you know that you're going to see me airbrushing in the beginning of the video. So let's get down to the table and I'll show you how I did him. Alright, so we're here in my airbrushing booth and we're going to be doing all of the Troglodytes here, starting with some burned flesh. It's a really dark brown with sort of a red hue to it. It's going to make a really good undercoat. Since the whole idea is we're trying to get these done as quickly as possible, doing things like washes take a really long time, so you want to make it so you can do this as quickly as possible. If you do not have an airbrush, then you can just paint this base coat on. It will obviously take longer. The entire process, the airbrush, what's great about it is not only does it leave a very thin coat when you airbrush the model, but it also speeds up the entire process of being able to paint all of the models when you do it assembly line style. So I'm just making sure that I'm getting into all the little nooks and crannies. These guys were already primed with Vallejo gray primer. I didn't do any sort of zenithal prime because of course we're trying to do these as quickly as possible so we can get them out onto the table. If you have played I was about to say Claustrophobia, you know that the Troglodytes are pretty much always on the board, so they're what you're probably going to want to paint first, considering they have the most amount of game time of any of the characters. I think the Redeemer is also in every single mission, but that might not even be true. There might be a mission where the Redeemer isn't in it. The Troglodytes are in every single mission, and you are always going to have handfuls of them being flung out onto the board, so getting them done quickly and being able to play with them does definitely spice up the game. So next up, I am airbrushing Khaki mixed in with the burned flesh. I am not doing just Khaki. That would be too bright of a transition, but I'm doing it from about a 45-degree angle. This would be as if I were zenithal priming. So if you don't have an airbrush, what you're going to do is dry brush that Khaki mixture over the top. That's going to be your quickest way to get that color on. So I'm bringing them up kind of to show you the transition that's happening here, sort of off frame. Now I'm doing pure Khaki from straight top down. Same thing, if you do not have an airbrush, this is where you're going to dry brush from the top down. Keeping the airbrush moving back and forth here. You don't want to put on too much at any given time. Now we're going to start on the Super Trogs here, and flat blue is being mixed into that burned flesh. So I'm using burned flesh again, and I mixed some flat blue into it to give it this very purple undertone that I'm going to paint the entire model in. Again, if you don't have an airbrush, just go ahead and base coat like normal. The airbrush just helps to speed up. It is definitely not necessary. It's just a tool that makes things a little bit easier. Now here I've gone into a actual 100% flat blue, and I'm doing from 45 degrees the entire way around. Now you also have to be smart about this. You can't do just 45 degree and say, okay, whatever hits is blue. You also have to try to fill some of the things out, paying attention to his giant right hand. And then he has a second small right hand, and you want to make sure that you get that as well. And when you're picking it out with a dry brush, it's a lot easier. to ensure that that you're getting all of those pieces. When you're using an airbrush, it's you have to, okay, let me try to actually use words here that make sense instead of just stumble along this. When you're using an airbrush, you have to go in and ensure that you're hitting those places and not rely on the flow of paint and air to do it all for you. When you're doing it with a dry brush, you have to be methodical because you're physically touching each and every space. So it actually is a little bit easier to find all of those areas that you want to make pop. I now added some ivory into the flat blue, and I'm doing that from the prime zenith, right from the top, and you can see there that it's really making the skin pop on those areas. See, I would have preferred if I would have done the face a little bit more. With the dry brush, you can easily pick that out and make sure that you hit it. But I think that the face was a little bit too dark. So here we have some Druchii violet, and I'm going to paint Druchii violet in the shadowed areas. This isn't going on the entire model. This is just going on to the shadowed areas. So I'm covering his face, his torso, his inner thighs, feet, underneath each arm, just to really ensure that I'm making it pop out. And by just doing the selective wash as I'm doing here, by the time I've washed both of these guys, I'm coming back with a dry, not a dry brush technique, a brush that is dry, and trying to make sure that none of it pools on any of the flat areas, because I want those flat areas to stand out. But by the time I have done the wash on both of these ultra trogs, and then I've done the entire grouping of 11 other troglodytes, the blue trogs are already dry. So once I start painting them, the other trogs, the normal trogs, start drying, and it just works like an assembly line. So if we had to wash the entire model, it would take longer to dry. We wouldn't be able to work as well. Washing just this one piece of the model makes it a lot simpler and a lot quicker. So I'm doing the exact same thing that I did on the other troglodytes, but instead of Druchii violet, I'm using Agrax Earthshade so that these guys stay in the brown tone. So I'm doing the same areas, the inner thighs, inside of the legs, the chest and torso, underneath each arm, and then a little bit in the like mouth and chin area. After they've dried, I now come back with some flat blue, and I'm taking flat blue and dry brushing. Now if you already dry brush, so if you don't have an airbrush, you probably have already done this and you don't need to do this step, so it actually would save you time in this area. But even though I'm trying to speed paint them, I want them to look good, so I'm coming back with some flat blue and ensuring that there's nice smooth transitions between the colors. So I'm going to dry brush pretty much all the colors that we've used so far, except for the shadow colors, obviously, because we don't want the shadows on there. But I'm going to next do some ivory and flat blue, just to make sure that we have really nice transitions and everything is really smooth. Because just because we're doing it fast doesn't mean we want to do it poorly. So here's the flat blue and ivory, and this one I'm going to stick to that top bright portion, and here I can also clean up the face just a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing on the other troglodytes. We're doing the khaki mixture, and then we'll do another dry brush of pure khaki again to bring back any brightness that we lost by wash getting in the wrong area, and to also smooth out the transition between these colors to ensure that they look natural. This is khaki with a little ivory mixed in it. That's a little brighter than what I did with the original dry brush. Or sorry, with the original airbrush. But the color, you know, needed to be brightened up a little bit. Extreme close up here to see. I'm going to use a Carroburg Crimson Wash. I did add water to it. I thinned it down. I didn't want it to be super dark red. And while this looks like I painted a ton of red on, I really didn't. So just showing you a couple of them here. Putting the red on here, and I do the same thing to the blue guys. Here I think I'm going to stop showing you both guys back and forth. So I already did the blue on here, and you're going to do this same exact thing to the regular troglodytes. Is I'm painting the eyes black. So they have this, it gives a little bit of depth to the eye sockets by doing that Carroburg Crimson. Let it dry completely, so you can see he's now got that red hue on his eyes. And then we're going to come in with the black and paint his eyeballs black. Now they have nice big eyeballs, which are great for painting. Anytime a miniature has those little tiny eyeballs that you have to go back and do 50 times, you know how annoying that is. Now we're taking some ivory and just a little touch of ivory in the corner of the eye, just to make it look like the eye is gleaming. You're going to do that on both types of models, and then the ivory is also going to be good for their teeth. Now normally, if we were trying to paint this model to a very high quality, we would have started with a darker color or started with ivory, then washed the teeth and came back and did more ivory. But we just sort of want to go as quickly as we can. I'm trying to line out the claws. It doesn't work too well. I do go back and clean that up later. You can use the ivory to line the claws. They've got feet claws and hand claws and Santa Claus, so you can go in and use the ivory to line those if you wish. There's not really much to talk about. I mean, the guys overall are 4 colors. I've got brown tone, I've got khaki tone, which is just a lighter brown. I have white and black. That's about it. These guys are blue and black and brown and white. So they're really simple. They're really fast. They don't take any effort. If this is going to be the first models that you paint, then congratulations. You started with some very, very forgiving models. So you're going to have a great time learning how to paint with these ones. They're so simple. I'm using some umbral umber to darken this. It's going to take like 3 or 4 layers because I have to cover up all of the blue and white that's on there. After I've gotten a couple layers of that, I then throw some Agrax Earthshade down to make sure that we have really dark crevices. This is being done on all 13 models. Their bases are the same. All 13 models are getting the exact same basing technique of dark brown, brown wash. Now we're using flat brown, which is a brighter brown, and this is about the back 2/3 of the radius. I'm sorry if you haven't been in math in a while, but yeah, you're trying to do like the outer 2/3. The inner circle you're not going to hit at all. So now we're coming back with some khaki, and this is going to be that outer 1/3, and that just makes there be like a gradient going in. The cracks are not deep enough to really dry brush the cracks and make it stand out. And again, we are trying to get these done quickly, otherwise we would spend time actually making all of those little rocks stand out. Both of the blue trogs have a rock that they're standing on, so for the those two trogs, you have to paint this rock. Well, I mean, you can choose not to. It's your model, but I'm going to paint it. So I'm starting with Mechanicus Standard Gray. Then I'm going to do a Nuin oil wash on that. This is the only part that is in this way time consuming, is because once you do the Nuin oil wash, you're going to have to wait about 10 minutes for it to dry. You could use a hair dryer, you could put it in front of a fan if you want it to dry a little faster, but it needs to dry completely before you do the next step. And that is some wolf gray. Wolf gray is just going to be used to sort of pick out a couple of the highlights on the rock, some of the little jagged points there. But with this, we only have one step left to do, and it's pretty clear. What we need to do here is we need to paint the rim of the base, and so I'm just going to use some Vallejo black. Simple enough, and this is for all 13 models. Black right around the outside, really cleans it up, brings it all together, and gets us a really good looking model to be able to throw down on the table. So let me know what you guys think down below. I think that they turned out really well. All 13 models done in under an hour, including the wait time for things to dry. So I think that they came out really good for how quickly they were done. They definitely look better than the painted models that came in the original game. So I think that you can do it just as easily as I did it. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Don't forget to subscribe. See you guys next time. New outro, I know. If you want to watch more in this series, click right here. If you would like to watch another video in a completely different series, click right here. And if you'd like an easy way to subscribe, other than clicking down below, even though it's right there and it says subscribe, you can click on this little picture right here. That also works.